Watching that new Gehenna shir, it's amazing. It's really good, and I'm starting to watch it. And you mentioned that there's a lot of people, Rishayim, that are going to be there for an eternity, and it's a little scary. But then I started to think that if Hashem is not bound by time, because He is the eternal eternity, then me talking to you today, Rabbi, is not really happening. Because if He's not bound by time, then how do we know that today is really real versus Moshe Rabbeinu coming down the mountain, or tomorrow's really real, but in the future, Mashiach just came. You understand? Because if he's not bound by time, then you and I talking right now and transpiring these ideas is it already happened in the past. So how do I know that today is really the real day? How do we know if Hashem is not bound by time? It's like, you ever see the movie The Terminator, the first two, not the other four. The other four were made by James Cameron. The first two were canon. They had Judgment Day, right? And then he comes all the way back to save the future. The future didn't have different versions of the future. That was the other stupid films. I'm talking about the first two were amazing, right? So again, like, how do we know that today is really today? So for instance, if somebody's burning in Gehenna, maybe he already burnt. So whatever I do is inevitable in a sense, meaning because whatever happened already happened. Or somebody else. There's still, but again, why should we continue to burn today if today is not really real? Maybe it's the future and the burning is over. It's, I don't know, it's very confusing, this whole thing with the Gehenna and Hashem not being bound by time. Because then today is not really real. I don't know. It's very confusing.
In so many words, you're looking at things from your own perspective, which is the wrong perspective, because since you are bound to time and you have to look at things based on time, you're assuming that Hashem has to look at things based on time, because that's what you could relate to. But that's because you're physical. Hashem is not physical. In loguf and lodmutaguf. So the fact that he is not bound to time is a couple of points to short points. I mean, more details I highly recommend reading Chovot HaLevavot. First 100 pages discuss it in detail, and much more, obviously. But the point is two things that you could take into account that'll help you. Number one, if God was bound to time, then time would be God. Meaning, if he was limited, then that would make whatever is not limited God. Why is that? Because if God was bound to time, that means that he has to have a beginning, and therefore also has to have an end. And that cannot be, because everything that is bound to time has a beginning and has an end. So that cannot be. But how do I think about the concept of no time? In reality, the Rambam writes that it's not possible for a person to think about the truth of no time, concept of no time, because everything we think of, we compare to time, because that's what the whole E equals mc squared Einstein popularized, because it really wasn't his original thought. It was already written 800, 900 years before him by the Ramban. But anyway, the point is that when we think of things based on something physical, based on something that's material. But the only thing that you can use to help your head get around it is, as far as thinking of no time, is, for example, when somebody has a dream, especially when they have a bad dream. Those dreams, I don't know if you've ever had them, I assume you probably did at some point. Sometimes those dreams, or good dreams even, but those dreams, they last for, you feel like you went through a whole journey in, I don't know, in a desert or something, and a person, I don't know, was tortured or went on all types of horrible things, and literally feels like the whole thing lasted for days, weeks, months, even years, but in reality, they were asleep for 5 minutes. And the dream, according to scientists, doesn't last more than 9 seconds. So whether it's 9 seconds or it's 5 minutes is irrelevant. If the person feels like they went somewhere and they went through a desert and they got all types of things that took days or years of their life, obviously it did happen. It's just that it's nothing that you can compare it to of this world. Why? Because the dream is a place of no time, no physicality, whereas your reality, which includes your thoughts of this world, is bound to time because it's bound to material. So just think of any dream that you've ever had that lasted a long time. In reality, it's something that took seconds. So that's one of the ways that a person could actually think of the concept of no time. And in regards to Gehenna, I mean, this answers the question for that also.
I really appreciate you taking the time and explaining it to me. I mean, I'm grasping what you're saying, but it doesn't answer if today is really real for me, meaning maybe 5 years from now is really real, because if God is not bound by time, then maybe today already transpired. You understand what I'm trying to say? It's like Lahavdil, that Terminator movie. Like he came from the future to go to the past to fix it, meaning he already things already existed in the future. So which one is the real timeline? Today or 10 years from now or 100 years from now? What is the real timeline? I still don't understand. Is today really the real timeline? And if today is the real timeline, how do we know it's the real timeline? That's the question. How do I know? How do you know? How does everybody else know? Because these events keep happening. Because Hashem is not bound by time. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting too philosophical over here.
No, it's not philosophy. It's just that you're confusing your reality with Hashem's reality. So here goes. For you, you're bound to the time and the reality that you see. You are obligated by that time frame. You have hunger that is current, and therefore you eat. You have a whatever other bodily need at this time, and therefore you meet it. Why? Because even if you needed it in the past, it's not going to help you today. Meaning, even if you satiated it in the past, that you ate it yesterday, it's not going to make you full today. And even if you already are going to want to breathe in the future, it's not going to satisfy you today. You have to meet your obligations of today. Today, you're bound to the time of today. Your confusion is that you're comparing God to yourself, which is again not a something that you're doing. Uh, in a negative way. You're simply confused, where God is not bound to time because God is not like us. There's no connection. There's no similarities between us and God. When he said that let us make man in our image, it's just in essence it's not a physical image, but rather the ability to decipher between good and bad. That's what making us like an image. But other than that, there is no similarities between us and God. And he is not bound to time, which means that the everything that is God is one, meaning that for us, we are separate from we are parts. So our thoughts are part of us, they're not us. Our body is made up of pieces, it's not a single thing. There's all organs and bones and limbs and so on and so forth. Whereas God is one. What does God mean? One. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. What does Echad mean? It means that God is one. His thoughts are the same thing as him. The past, the present, and the future are all the same. There is no difference for him as far as the past, the present, and the future. It's all the same thing. Now, we do not have the capability of thinking that way, or even truly understanding that concept of what does it mean, the past, the present, and the future, because the past is is a memory to us. So we vaguely remember certain things. We remember other things clearly, but generally speaking, it's unless you have a unique illness, which is an illness where a person remembers every single event in their life. A person doesn't remember everything. There is an illness like that people remember literally every single thing in their life, and it's a very, very terrible disease because the person doesn't stop feeling those feelings. So, for example, if somebody ever, I don't know, lost somebody in their life or had any type of pain, they remember it all the time. So it's one of the biggest gifts that Hashem gave us. The biggest chesed that He gave us is actually being forgetful. That we forget, because that allows us to overcome difficulties in our life, whatever that difficulty may be. Somebody was, had a heartache of some kind, wants to forget it as soon as possible. Now, the point is that these thoughts are separate from us. So what we thought of yesterday or 2 weeks ago may not feel like it's separate from us, but if you give it enough time, it becomes a distant memory, and in essence, usually it's forgotten to some extent. God, on the other hand, does not have such a thing. His thoughts are, and His will, and He Himself are all one, meaning that when He thinks of something, it becomes a reality instantly, because there is no separation between He and His thoughts and the reality. For us, we have a thought, and that thought is a part of us, but making it into a reality is another part. So that's the another very, very big difference between us and God. So the fact that God has no past, no present, and no future, it's all the same thing to Him, does not in any way, shape, or form change our reality, because the way you extend and understand it is this. If, let's say, I told you that I know the future, and you said, okay, fine, prove it to me. And I said, okay, I'm gonna take a piece of paper, don't look, okay? I'm gonna take a piece of paper and I'm gonna write it, or in today's terms, I'm gonna make a voice note. And I'm going to send you a voice note, but you're not allowed to hear it until tomorrow, okay? And you're an honest guy, and you're going to go on your day and do whatever it is that you do every day. You're gonna work, you're gonna be with the family, you're gonna play with the cute kid in the profile picture you have, and all that stuff, okay? Now, the next day, you're gonna press play on the profile, on the voice note that I gave you, and you're gonna discover that I said every single thing that you did that day. I already said it today, meaning I knew the future. Now, did my knowledge of your future change your decisions? No, it did not change your decisions, because the fact that I had pre-existing knowledge of your decisions does not mean that I made you decide one thing or the other. You decided it on your own free will. Now, it's the same concept with God. Now, at the same token, the conflict comes, or the difficulty comes, well, if it's decided, then how does TESHUVA help? So the fact that we have free will doesn't mean that there's only one option. And that God knows that future of that one option, but rather every single decision that we make has a different outcome. And God knows all of those outcomes. Meaning, if, let's say, you pick up a piece of paper and you read that piece of paper, and that piece of paper leads you to do the tshuva, or you don't pick up that piece of paper and you don't do tshuva, or you pick up that piece of paper and you rip that piece of paper, and therefore that leads you to discover that there was something under that piece of paper that you ripped that actually encouraged you to start becoming a Manish Friedman listener, okay? Or option number 4 is you just simply ignore the piece of paper altogether, and as a result of it, you just go on in your life as if nothing happened. Now, all 4 of those things have to do with that same piece of paper, with 4 different decisions, but 4 different outcomes, okay? Now, God knows that outcome for all 4 of those items, and not just those 4, all infinite amount of items that are possibilities for the result of your actions. And all of those future realities are a current reality for God. And thereby, He is not altering your decision. You are altering your future by your decisions. And God allows you to do whichever one that you want. If you pick up the piece of paper and do tshuva, then of course that's the outcome that you chose. He didn't choose it for you. He knew it could happen, but he didn't decide it for you. If you choose to rip it, then he knew that could happen also, and exactly what that reality looked like from beginning to end, and what the reward is going to be, and who is going to be in your life. And not just that one decision, but an infinite amount of other decisions that follow it, that lead to an infinite amount of decisions, All of those things he knows currently, and thereby has no past, no present, no future, but at the same token does not interfere with your current choice. You are bound to the current timing. And again, there is no such thing as a which time is real, which time is not. The reality for us is what we see. That's why halacha is judged based on what we see, not what we can't see. So, for example, when people are looking for bugs in food, we are judged based on what the naked eye can see. So, if let's say there are going to be some organisms on the food that you can't see with the naked eye, you need a microscope for it. You're not going to get judged for it as a sin if you didn't clean those, which is virtually impossible. You're not getting judged for it. They still affect the body, but you're not getting judged for it. You're only getting judged for the things that you can see, because that's the reality. Hopefully this explains it for you, and let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much for taking your time. This second voice note really hit the nail on the head. So it's basically, it doesn't hinder your free choice, because Hashem lives in the past, future, and present, and he knows all the alternate versions of the choices that you're going to make. You could have done A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever, multiple versions of what you were going to do. He knows. It's almost as if somebody like the Terminator, he came back from a time machine and said this and this happened in the future. At the same time, it doesn't hinder like John Connor making those decisions, because it would have been a little bit different or somewhat different, but at the same time, in essence, the future would happen, but in different versions. But you still have the freedom of choice. It makes sense. I see that. It's basically freedom of choice with alternate versions.
אני מברך את הרבנים, רגע. אני מברך את הרבנים, הרב ירון ראובן, הרב אפרים כחלון, ראשי ארגון בעזרת השם, שהלכו בפי עליון, שעלו מעלה, יהיה להם ברכה והצלחה, הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא בלשונות ליבם לטובה ולברכה, שבכל מה שיפנו ישכילו ויצליחו, יזכרו לעשות כאלה וכאלה, הודיעו תורה לאדירה, אמן ואמן.
בעזרת השם רשת בכל הארץ. הוא היהודי הזה, הוא היה מיליונר, סגר את כל הביזנס, אמר אני משקיע פה בעולמה של תורה.
איפה הוא גר?
בפלורידה.
פלורידה, איפה זה פלורידה? באמריקה.
במיימי. כן, ליד. אנחנו שם עכשיו הולכים להקים קהילה ספרדית.
חזק אותו בשמי.
קהילה ספרדית גדולה.
תעבירו מה שבירכתי אותו.
כן, קהילה ספרדית גדולה.